Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk About It Tuesday. I'm really excited for this month's conversation with Cassie Kitzmiller. She is a business growth strategist who's going to talk with us about marketing our books and paying for advertising. Cassie, do you want to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me. Number one, I love getting to share opportunities for authors, small business owners, really just anybody with a passion to get their message out. Ways that are working in today's day and age, because marketing is a unruly animal on the best of days, and it can be a really hungry, cash eating, time eating monster on the worst of days. So anytime I can have a conversation and just help others kind of simplify and maybe shorten the path to seeing results in your marketing, then it's really exciting to me. So I am not a marketing coach or strategist. I am actually a business coach, but I have published, let's see where my books, several books of my own. And through books and business and just having to learn the online game, I've learned a lot about marketing. So while I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know everything, because that is certainly not the case, I can say that it is my passion to help businesses and authors grow without having to spend as much time and energy in that journey. Because I've spent the time, I've spent the energy. Let me save you some yourselves.
Well, and just so you guys know, I met Cassie through Facebook. I think it was a copywriting group we were in.
Yeah, I was going to say,
And
thanks for writing.
yeah, so we've known each other for a couple of years through social media. But I actually reached out to her and we had a conversation about my business growth strategies. And we were kind of talking, and I was like, oh, this is so good. Like, authors need to know this because we don't often think of our writing as a business. We think
Mm.
of it as a calling or a ministry, and those things are true, but there is business aspects to it. And one of the hardest parts for us is marketing, knowing how, when, where, all of the stuff. So what I loved about Cassie when we connected was she shares my philosophy, which is kind of a backwards approach to a lot of marketing, which is before you spend money on marketing, make sure you have your community. In writing world, we call that know your audience. That's a big part of it. Connect with them, build that. And so just share with us a little bit about how that's worked for you in your marketing journey and your business and what that looks like.
Yes, I will say community building is really at the heart of all that I do. I coach on it. I have programs around building and cultivating a community for really three main reasons. Number one is if you will build a community first, then you take the game out of your head from who is my audience and they become real people. So it's no longer you sitting there trying to figure out who is my audience. You have real life humans that you can have conversations with that are telling you they're using your language. They're using your keywords. They're telling you what it is that they want more of.
That's
So
a
building.
great point. I'm going to stop you for a second. Hold on. That's a
Yeah, no
great point
problem.
because I want to say, like, I've actually started implementing that in my marketing. I'll think of a client. I'll think of, you know, Anne or Melissa or Barb, and I'll be like, what would I say to them? And it's not this abstract concept. It's now this real person. And that happens to our readers too. When we get feedback from somebody who says, I loved your book, it changed my life, because we all love those.
Uh-huh.
um, Now you can write to that person. Like, you can market in a way that looks different. So I love that you brought that
And it's
up. Thank you. Thank you.
conversational. It's
Yes.
not this like conglomerate of, oh, my ideal audience likes Chick-fil-A, shops at Target, and reads Southern Living, And then you're like,
Yeah.
well, I just described 40 billion women. Like, how is
Right.
that supposed to help me talk to her?
Yes.
So when you can think about them in a community setting and you can realize that they are actually a broad makeup of people, but there's common language, common markers, common things that bring them together, it's really powerful. Number two is it is going to drastically shorten your marketing success because you know your audience, because you are in real conversation and doing life with them. It really does shorten that path to being like what works. So one of the things I always recommend is if you have an audience, if you have a community, if you have any humans with that will conversate with you, test your marketing on them first. If they
Mm.
don't respond, please don't get paid advertising behind it. If it's something that hits a marker with them, then you know that you're much more likely to have success in a colder audience. So being able to test your marketing is really, really powerful. And then number three, being able to have an audience that will support you when you launch something paid is huge. So one of my clients, she's a teacher And we actually just interviewed her on the Christian Women Business Builders podcast, but she is a teacher. She built a program and inadvertently built a community off the back end of her program. She was like, I didn't intend it. They just didn't want to leave. Like they just loved it. They didn't want to leave. And so she built this paid community. And she just launched her first book. And she has, I mean, for a small publisher with she's not put a dollar in paid advertising yet. She's blown it out of the water because her community is there to support the book. And so now we're going to use that momentum. We're going to put paid ads behind her natural momentum, and she's going to see so much greater return. So community it's where it's at.
So I'm going to put in a little plug because anyone who's worked with me at all knows that this is the passionate topic for me about knowing your audience. And I just want to say it again. Christian women is not an audience. It's not zeroed in enough. It's not specific enough. Christian fiction, there's subgenres for a reason. And when it comes to marketing, especially if you're going to pay for advertising, it's really important that we're able to dial in and know who the specific person, and community is a great way to do that. Most of the authors I work with have a Facebook page at this point for their an author page, and look at who's engaging with your content. Make sure you're following those people back, first of all, like make it a relational thing, where they're not just pouring into you, but you're also commenting on their stuff, because then their followers are going to see you and they're going to, you've already got a common ground there. But really lean in and make sure that you're getting a clear picture of, like you said, Cassie, that common phrasing, the common concepts, or if you're
And I
writing
think it's
nonfiction.
important to go deep, as you're saying, it's not demographics most of the time. So if you've done a lot of audience research, there may be some common demographics. They may be believers, they may be women, they may be in an age group between 30 and 50. Like there will be demographics, but what we're really looking for are the psychographics. We're looking for the
Mm.
common denominators of what are they looking for? Why does this matter to them? What are those personality traits? What do they identify with in this writing, in your writing? Like, what are those common threads? The psychographics, if you can speak to those, are so much more powerful than, are you a Christian woman in her 30s who likes to, walk your dog? They're like, oh, yeah, that's me. But when you can say, are you struggling with this? Are you experiencing these struggles? Then this is for you. So when you can go even deeper into the psychographics, that's where your reader really starts to become a real human and not just this poster ideal audience.
That is so good. So, as I mentioned, the philosophy that Cassie and I have is that you build your audience first before you start investing money into paid advertising. Because if you don't have that clear idea, then your marketing isn't going to hit the right people. So, how do we know when we're ready to pay for advertising? Like,
So there's 3 times that I say you're ready to pay for advertising. Number 1 is if you're testing an idea. So for some of us, if you have, maybe you're not even writing your book yet. Maybe you want to start writing a book and you're just looking to see is there interest in this area.
mm,
You can actually run interest-based ads and have them go to a waiting list. And if they sign up for the waiting list and you get enough feedback, you're like, okay, there is enough interest here for me to justify putting in this idea. Maybe it's a genre you're not used to writing in and you want to kind of test the waters. That can be it can short track your path because a lot of us get an idea and we either go full speed into it and then we're like, oh man, there's nobody out here that's interested in this. Or we put the brakes on because we're like, oh, I'm going to test it. I'm going to see if this is a good idea. I'm going to do my research. And months go by and nothing's happened. So you can put front end budget to test an idea, run your ad, put a mock-up of the book cover on there. You can get those really affordably now, and just send them to a waitlist page. If you get interest, now you already have a built-in audience ready to buy when that book does come out. So that would be the first time.
I think that's good too, because there's also, on the flip side of that, there's also saturated audiences.
Mhm.
Like
Good
memoir is
point.
really popular right now, but is
But
your
is it gonna
memoir
stand
different
out?
enough that people
Yeah.
or are they sick of reading about A, B, C, D? So it kind of gives you that chance to figure out too, we know nothing new is under the sun, right? So there's no new ideas. They're all repurposed ideas. But you have your own unique voice and your own unique way of saying it. So that kind of advertising can also help you realize, does my voice have a place in
Yes.
this?
That would be a great time. Number 2 is in your pre-launch campaign. So if you have a book coming out and you really want it to do well right off the bat, again, doing a pre-launch campaign doesn't have to be a lot of money, but it can be a great way to get a reader list built. So a lot of authors are like, I just don't have a reader list. I have my mom, I have 5 friends, I have, a small group at church, and that's my readers. It can be very challenging to try to build an audience when you don't have anything out there yet. And a lot of people struggle with that. They're like, "What, do I just go post for in Facebook groups and hope somebody volunteers?" So running again a small ad campaign at the beginning to build up a wait list, that's a great time to put something in where you do a free gift. Maybe they get a PDF of the book for free by signing up for the waiting list. There's different ways that you can put bonuses in there. And that's again a great way to say, at least I have some audience to launch my book to. But I want to clarify, this is not a money making tactic. So if you're like, oh, I'm going to run ads and I'm going to pre-fill my audience, unless you are a big name or you already have a big email list, your ads, this is advertising budget. It's not, I'm going to make money when I
Right.
sell my book off of these ads.
We're not
So
going to recoup that
understand.
expense the first day the book launches.
Most
Most
likely not.
likely.
Now, I mean,
Yeah,
does it happen?
of course.
Absolutely. But again, if you're doing this to build an audience list, what you're paying for are people to talk to. You're not paying for buying people who are now going to go and buy thousands of copies. Can it happen? Absolutely. It's just the biggest myth in advertising is because I've spent money, I should make money. That is not the case. Look at business for all of history. Advertising is paying to be front of mind, and it's paying to get in the eyes of your audience. It's really the beginning of the equation, it's not the end. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, when I'm making money, then I can turn on ads because then I'll be able to make more money." If you have got an organic audience, that does work. But if you're putting advertising out there to start to get readers and start to build your list, then really what you're paying for is the visibility. So just understanding why I'm running ads can be really key.
Yeah.
But then the third point is, okay, I've got my book out there, it's launched, I have some readership, I've got some reviews. Now I want to extend the life of my book. I want to
Mhm.
increase my sales. I want to grow my audience beyond what I can reach organically. That's another great time to put kind of an evergreen ad campaign on. And again, it may not pay for itself. So for most authors, you want to have either a series of books where you're sending them to a first one. You
Mhm.
want to have an offer or some kind of something built off the back end to help recoup some of that investment. But most books do not have a profit margin high enough to run a paid ad and then make a lot of money off of.
So I want to touch on that really quick because I think, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of us view this as a ministry or a
Mhm.
calling. God's asked me to write this book and I'm just being obedient. It's really important to understand bigger picture than that.
Mm.
Are you looking to make money off this book?
Yeah, which
Are
is
you
fine.
looking
There's nothing wrong with
right?
that. I
Are
mean,
you looking to recoup your costs? Because
mhm.
there are costs, even if you self-publish, there's, a
Oh,
designer, there's an editor.
for sure.
So are you, and then, we don't like to think about this in terms of ministry and calling, but what's your budget? Like you
Mhm.
need to be intentional and plan through some of those things. And so I do a book budget forecast, which I'll share a link in the comments for that
Oh,
if you need
awesome.
it. But it has, these are the things that you may want to spend money on. And you get to decide, it's your budget,
Mhm.
you get to decide. But advertising is a section on there and it's just kind of blank because you get to choose where you're going to put that and where the right investments are. So,
And I will say, just to bump in there, I don't know if
yeah,
you have it differentiated, but 20% is kind of the industry standard, and that was prior to online. You can spend way more than that. But if you're a percentage person, which I am, because
that's
it's hard
good.
to say, well, how much money do I spend if I don't have any money? Okay,
Now
well,
I want to update my sheet.
yeah, so 20% is a really healthy advertising budget, because it still leaves 80% to cover other expenses and profit. But really, most businesses have at least a 20% run budget for advertising. So that's just a
Okay.
good marker if you're kind of looking for like, where do I start? What am I putting, where am I putting that budget into?
And if your goal is strictly obedience and God told you to write it and maybe it's just for one person and he's going to bring that, then like, don't feel pressured to do advertising. That's not what this is about. This conversation is for those of you who think that might be a good fit for you and you're trying to figure out what it looks like. So we're in no way trying to force you into advertising. I don't want you to invest money you don't
Do
have.
not have
That's
to
not what I'm
advertise. I have
saying.
2 of my 3 books are not running paid ads right now.
Yeah.
Now, some of them are seasonal, so they'll pick back up, but yeah, they're not on the
So
paid.
in regards to when you're ready to pay for ads, is
Mhm.
there like a certain number in your community that you should have? Is there, or is that really not relevant at this point?
I would say there's not so much a benchmark of like a number of humans. So I call them growth markers. So one of the things that we work when we're working on growth, growing business, growing readers, growing anything is you have to have markers of growth. So depending on for you what your marker of growth is, that kind of lets you know when I'm ready to do paid advertising. For some of us, that may be a member of in my community. For some of us, that may be budget coming in. For some of us, that may be that looks more like once I get my third book out and I have enough of a backlog to justify bringing new audience in, and hopefully they will continue on in the series. Your growth markers, having kind of that line where it says, "This is when I'm ready." Sometimes it's a time period. So with my author, my teacher who just brought her book out, she launched her ebook this spring. She launched her print book just recently this fall. She's still writing the natural algorithms from having released those in organic sales. So for her, we're doing a time. We're like, okay, once we start to see your organic sales dip, we want to bump that with paid. So her growth marker is actually a lack of growth. When we start to see our organic dip, and we're like, okay, we don't want to lose all that momentum. We want to go in and supplement with the paid budget here. So knowing your marker is key
And I
there.
love that so much because a big part of what I coach in is your journey is unique. What works for
Hmm.
someone else may not work for
Yeah.
you. So that growth marker concept really fits with that well. You know what your markers are. The Holy Spirit will guide you into those. If you're not sure, ask him, talk with him about it. And for me personally, I released my first book in 22. I'm working on my second book, which will come out in 25, but I also have a series of small group discussion guides that are launching in the next month. And I have 3 of those ready to roll because I want
So
it
that
to
would
be
be a
something
perfect just
where,
for an example, like, you would say, "Okay, after I launch my second one, well, now I got enough out there that I wanna start building a paid,"
and
you
I
know,
didn't
and get
realize
something.
those were my growth markers, but that is kind of what I've been doing in my
Yeah,
own head. So
I
thank
say a
you for
lot of
giving
times
me
it's
the words
that
for it.
unique path and timing. Because, for example, if somebody's had a book that's been out for a couple of years, well, does it make sense to just go and now randomly start throwing paid ads on it? Maybe not, because the book sat silent for a while. Maybe there's not a lot of organic traffic behind it. You're literally trying to revive something that has 0 traction. So in timing purposes, when you have something new coming out or when you already have a reason for people to pay attention, that's a great time to put paid ad behind it because you're helping the algorithm. You're helping your numbers get boosted where they're already getting a natural boost. So that's a great point as well.
I know we spend a lot of time talking about when you're ready, but I think that's a key aspect
Yeah,
of
it really is.
um, when you're ready to
The
hit the
real
ball.
one is when you have money to burn. No, I'm just
Yes,
kidding. When you are willing to, and I always say set a budget, which I think that's one of our questions, but just as in everybody is unique, your goals are unique, your budget's going to be unique. Somebody may say, you know what, I'm going full in on paid ads. I'm not paying anybody for any organic. I don't have the time to put into a lot of organic. So I'm not going to pay a VA to go post on social media platforms. I'm just going to put my budget into a paid ad, know that it's going to do the heavy lifting for me. And I'm okay with that. Whereas somebody
right.
else may say, hey, I already have a really strong social media game. Maybe I have a VA who's going to be pushing stuff for me. I'm not gonna put as much in paid ads, but I wanna have a budget in place so that I'm using the platform as it's intended to get me readers.
I do want to touch on one more thing about audience really quick. If you don't have like a Facebook group where you're controlling who comes in and out of it, and you're just using your author page to determine your community, um, take some time and look at your followers,
Mm.
the ones who will let you, because I know they can set the controls on that. Because one thing that's interesting, I write for Christian women primarily who are ready to grow in their faith and are looking for some support. They feel stuck, they're struggling, and they need a next step. Um, and it's interesting the number of men who follow me or, you know, marketing people who like those aren't necessary. So just because you have that number of followers, make sure they're actually the audience that you're talking about too. Doesn't mean kick them out, doesn't mean don't let them follow you because obviously, it's still marketing, but your number is a little inflated because not everyone who follows your author page is going to be. Whereas with a group, you have membership questions you ask as they come in. You know them differently in a group than you do just on your author page. So just be mindful of that.
And this is
Um,
important too for ads, so I'm glad you said that. If you have a private group, that does not help you with ads. Your author page is actually where you'd be running your ads from. So the
Right.
majority of your data now comes from your author page. So if you have a group and you haven't given a lot of attention to your page, it's a good idea occasionally to ask members of your group to like your page, because when you run Facebook ads, your page is the platform with which they're able to pull data, not your private group. So email list is really huge, and your Facebook page followers are data that can be tracked. So that's a great
That's a
side note.
great, thank you for pointing that out. Yes. Okay. So I'm ready. I've decided I've got my community. I'm ready to invest in this. There's a lot of platforms we can advertise on: Google, Facebook, Amazon, Goodreads. I think even has advertising now. I could be wrong on that, but I think they do. So how do we know where to invest?
What for authors, I will almost always recommend starting on Amazon if your book is if you're self-published, which I'm assuming most of your audience is,
Yeah.
and if your book is easily listed on Amazon. Number 1, because it's a little especially if you're newer or if you are not as in depth with your audience, you do not have to know your audience as well on Amazon. You just need to know your keywords. So you do need to be able to identify, what is my audience looking for? What keywords are they using? But you don't necessarily have to know the demographics and psychographics as much, because they're a search-based platform. So all they're doing is when somebody goes on to Amazon and they're typing in a word, they're just pulling the keywords for your book and positioning it.
So really quick, for those of you who don't
Mhm.
have marketing background, keywords is simply, think of it this way. I'm going to sit down on Amazon and I'm going to type in books about grief,
Mhm.
books about
Books about grief would
growing
be
in
a
faith.
huge broad category. So this is a good
Right.
example. So books about grief. So I always teach marketing as a bullseye approach. So if you're throwing darts and you're trying to hit the bullseye, marketing is a lot that way. So books about grief would be a really big bullseye. Like, I'm not going to get a whole lot of points if I'm hitting out in grief. Now, if I say books about grief for pet loss, now I've just gotten really small and I can aim right at the bullseye. So the smaller you can get, the closer you're going to get to that bullseye. So the closer you can get to the bullseye, the more effective your marketing dollars are going to be. So even though it seems like, oh, well, there's a whole lot more readers for marketing for grief. Well, yes, there are, but you are fighting and you're not going to get the points. You're not going to get the algorithm to fight for that category. So the
And you,
smaller you can get, the more your budget's going to go.
running with that analogy too, if I wrote a book about, pet loss,
Mhm.
I don't want to spend money on people who haven't lost a pet
Exactly, because
because
now
they're
you're
not
just
going to
throwing
buy
darts on
my
the
book.
wall. You're
They're
not
going
even
to
hitting
see
the
my
bullseye now.
ad, but they're not going to buy my book.
And you're paying for that. So it's
And I'm
really
paying, yeah.
important. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, well, I want broader keywords because I want to show up." You're not going to show up. You're going to be wasting your dollars against the big boys in marketing.
You
So
want
for a
to show
perfect
up to the right
example,
people.
yes, like I wrote a book on Christmas tree decorating. Now, if I was just going to search for the words keyword, like the keywords Christmas tree, which I do have in there, I'm going to bid like a nickel. I won't bid a small amount, like a small amount so that it does get pushed up. But now if I'm going to start to go in here, I'm going to put Christmas tree designer, Christmas tree. I was trying to think some of my keywords that show up really well. I've got to actually turn this one back on. So we're right at the season. But I'm going to start to get a lot more nuanced in my search terms. I put my name in there, which I've heard different things on, but my name is unique. So if they put in Christmas tree Cassie, well, bam, now I'm right up at the top. So if you're in a very broad category, you really want to get more targeted on your keywords, or else you're just not going to show up. Now, if you're in a niche category, like my author friend, my teacher who just published hers, she's in an um, educational coaches for teachers. Like her keywords are already pretty specific. People are looking for that. But we went even smaller in there and started pulling out words so that she will be one of the only 10 books to show up when people type that in. Like, she'll be at the
Right.
top of the page. So the more specific you can get on Amazon, the more the farther your budget is going to go.
That makes so much
Now,
sense. And the more you're going to convert because you're going to be hitting the right people.
they're looking for
And
your book, not
yeah,
just
how many
anything.
people see the ad doesn't matter. It's how many people who buy. That's really what your goal is.
Exactly, because you're paying for placement. So even if they don't click on your book, if they put you at the top of that page, you're paying for that spot. Now,
Yeah.
when they click on it, you're paying a higher percentage. But so don't be afraid of going broad, but just please make sure you bid higher on the keywords where you're more niched in, because you are going to see greater buys and greater returns. The second thing is Facebook. Facebook is an entirely different animal. I cannot talk about TikTok. I have not ran TikTok ads. Um, Pinterest, I love Pinterest ads. I have yet to crack the code on Pinterest for authors. I do know there's incredible people who have done that. So if there's somebody you can reach out to for that, that would probably be a great topic there. It's more of what I've seen on Pinterest is more bloggers who have books than straight up authors who are trying to send people to buy a book.
Okay.
But that game has changed recently because they've added a lot more to that platform. So Pinterest, I'm not going to speak on. Instagram, Facebook, and a lot of the other apps are all linked together under Meta. So if you're going to do Instagram, Facebook, a lot of the other online placements where you're like, how in the world did they know that I was on there? It's because they're buying their data from
Yeah.
Facebook. That one you do need to know your audience really well. And I'm not going to say don't do it yourself because I am a big component of learning how to do things yourself. I will say there's a time and a place for having somebody come in and assist you when you're running Facebook ads. Number one, the platform changes like daily. I think there's some like little troll behind the scenes that's just like, let's go move something around and change it just to
The
see if anybody
leprechauns
notices. Yeah, like
causing
you're like,
mischief.
why? Why did you do that? I don't know. Number two is because they are intentionally changing the algorithms often with the audience. Who can you target? One of my ads that was doing great. I went in there the other day and they were like, oh, hey, one of these audience sectors is just gone. You can't advertise them anymore. I'm like, oh, great. So now you have to redo your ad set. So it's an ever changing monster and it's a very hungry monster, in that you can put a lot of money in and not see a lot of return if you're not careful. And so if you're going to do Facebook ads, I would recommend either really doing your research or getting somebody to help you along the way because they can be very lucrative, but you want to make sure they're set up correctly or you're just kind of like that machine, you're just feeding the machine money.
And I want to point out something else with social media advertising that can be problematic for some people.
Mhm.
Um, it's an algorithm, like all of it, but the algorithm on social media functions a little bit differently, and they determine people's interest based on their engagement.
Mm.
So if you're marketing to Christian women and there are men who go on things and just be antagonistic about stuff, Facebook's going to see them as someone who likes this content and they're going to show them your ad. And so you might get those trolls, you might get those, and that's discouraging and it's hard to know how to navigate. So I want to just caution you, if you do social media advertising, you are more likely to see those negative troll type comments on your posts and things like that, that you don't necessarily deal with on Amazon because it's not an
And you're
engagement
going to get
thing.
all the spam posts. Your page is getting shut down. Your copyright got, I mean, you're going to get all of that garbage on there
The
because
famous New York Times author who wants to help you with your book, who
just all
doesn't.
of it. Because again, you're
Yeah.
using your page, so they can message you directly through your page.
Yeah.
This is one of the places I do highly recommend. So I only run ads for my clients who are ready for Facebook ads because again, you have to be mentally, physically, emotionally, financially prepared. I know I'm making it sound scary. It's not scary. It's just you do need to be prepared. Like you said, you are going to get more comments. You are going to have to pay more to play. So with Amazon, you can set your budget up, you can cap it, and you only get hits. You only get charged when you get visibility and hits.
So
With
let's talk about
Facebook, they're running that baby all the time. So you're paying whether or not you're actually getting views or
and
not.
they're running it to people who may not be your audience, even though you're trying really hard to zero in. If they're engaging with content that they still may not be your ideal reader, so it's a little bit different.
And there's a lot of different things you can ask them to do, get them to do. Your goal of the campaign can be very different on what you actually want them to do. So you need more strategy behind a Facebook Meta ad than you do an Amazon ad.
So in short, Amazon's a little easier
I would
and
say much easier for authors. Now,
and a
again,
little
if
more
you're a
cost
coach
effective.
and you
Yeah,
want to get clients, Amazon's not your
different.
platform. But if
Yeah,
you're selling books and
correct.
you've already got your book on Amazon, it's a great place to put a little budget.
So let's talk really quick
Mhm,
about budget.
mhm,
You mentioned 20% of your
mhm.
total book budget would be for ads. A lot of the people that I work with are first-time writers, first-time publishing. Um, and so their budgets tend to be a little smaller because they haven't actually, seen any return on that yet. Um, someone, and I don't know if you can do this or not, I'm gonna put you on the spot, but someone brand new, just starting out, first book, what kind of a dollar amount would make it worth it?
$50 for
Okay.
Amazon. I would say start a $50 a month budget campaign. And the way that works is when they use up your budget, they'll let you know. So if you're like, man, I sold this many books, then it makes sense for me to refeed the machine. Think of Amazon ads as kind of like a soda machine. Like you put in so much in, how much am I getting out? Does it make sense for me to put more in? Am I getting enough out? So if I just keep feeding the machine and I'm not making any sales, well, I probably don't want to put anything in until I tweak my keywords, until I go in and see what, maybe I need to update my listing page. Maybe my book page is where, I'm getting the clicks through, but they're not buying. So data for me, and again, this is another important key. You're also paying for data. You get metrics that you will not otherwise get when you run ads. So you can see how many people clicked on your page. So if you put $50 in, they're going to your page and you only get 1 to 2 sales. Okay, well, maybe I'm losing them on that page. I may need a better description. I may need to be able to show more of my book. So it gives you ideas on where am I losing people. If nobody's clicking, okay, well, then my keywords aren't strong enough. They're just not getting in front of the book. So $50 is a great place to start, and then again, they're gonna let you know, "Hey, your budget's up. Do you wanna add more, or do you just wanna kinda leave it until you wanna refill it?" With Amazon ads, you really have to have couple $100 to start, because if not, you're not gonna get any data. So here's what I kinda think: Amazon for sales, Facebook to scale.
Okay.
Amazon for sales, Facebook to scale. So if you're getting out there, your book has got a lot of natural oomph behind it, and you have a product on the back end to sell, a coaching product, something on higher ticket. Facebook makes sense because now you can scale it a lot quicker than you can on Amazon.
And I want to touch on that too really quick because not everyone self-publishes. I do
Mhm,
have clients who are looking for agents and traditional publishers.
mhm.
And your social media metrics does matter in that, so scaling might be your target because you are going
Exactly.
traditional. And so maybe
If
it's
you
worth the
need a reader
investment.
list
Mhm.
of 15, 20,000, then you can get that on Facebook. You will be
Yeah.
struggling to get that on Amazon. Facebook, you get the benefit of being able to capture their information in between if set up effectively. So if you're growing your email list, Facebook's probably going to be the platform for you. Amazon is sales, Facebook to scale. So
Yeah.
it
I
really
love that.
is,
That's great clarity.
yes, kind of the
So again,
difference
that goes
between
back to your unique journey and story. What are you trying to do? Are you looking for traditional publishing and you're trying to scale your following to make an impact? Are you trying to um go it, the Lone
Are you
Ranger
trying to sell
style and
books and reach
yeah,
the people who your book's really gonna make a
right.
difference in their lives? So,
So
knowing that each platform has a time and a place, but not feeling pressured into because you can read anything and everybody's like, "Oh, Facebook strategy," where they pay for shipping and you make your money back on there's all those incredible funnels, but you have to know your end goal and you have to know where you are in your business. Because to get that free book funnel set up is going to cost you thousands of dollars. Even if you're super techie, running the ads to start to convert so that you're making that money back is going to cost you a lot of money.
so
So just
let's wrap up with those who aren't techie.
yes, those who aren't
um
techie,
I suggest considering a conversation with Cassie. She's a growth strategist and she can help you because I'll be very honest and transparent. I come from a marketing background in communications. I don't run ads. I always had a company who did that because the algorithms do change
that's what they
regularly.
do. Yeah.
And that was primarily with Facebook and Google. I know that I don't have the skill set I need to do it effectively, and I'm not willing to flush $50 a month down the toilet.
Mhm.
So keep in mind, sometimes it's better to talk with someone, have them help you even set up that first campaign so you know what you're doing. And then you can mirror that later down the road because you kind of know what you're doing a little bit.
That's my favorite way to
But
do it. When I work with
there's
clients, I only keep a handful of ongoing clients, but setups and usually a month to 2 of management, you'll start to get the hang and you'll get the data to know what is it that I'm looking for. So that's a great way to do it.
So if you want to do this, it's okay to ask for help. Don't put that pressure on yourself to have to know all the things. There's a ton of YouTube videos, there's a ton of information out there. But like we said, and I can't emphasize enough, algorithms change. So if that video you're watching is from 2 years ago, it's
Don't
probably
watch
not
it.
correct.
Yeah, don't watch that one.
Yeah, make sure, and if even if it's 6 months ago, they might be talking about what they knew 2 years ago if they're not an expert in the field. So don't be afraid to learn and ask for help from people who do know. And
And if it's okay, I'd be happy to do a complimentary call for anybody who watches this from your audience. Just
oh,
make sure they let me know that it's from your audience so I get them the complimentary link.
Thank you, Cassie. Actually, if you don't mind sharing with me like your website and whatever information you want to share with people if they do want to connect with you, follow
Yes,
you on
absolutely.
social or whatever, I'll
So
share those in the comments.
perfect. That's my Christian Women Business Builders is my business name, and everything kind of goes under that umbrella. So we'll get you those links.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for talking with us today. I'm really excited as I'm getting close to launch. Like this just energized me. Like, no, I can do
I can
this.
do this.
So
Yeah,
thank
it's not
you.
scary.
I needed the pep talk at least. And again, Cassie, it's just a blessing to know you and to have you come and share with us. So thank you for that.